Hello gainers, Ralphie here on location on a rather chilly spring day, but it's reassuring to know that summer is around the corner, thank goodness. I'll come back to that shortly. And I'd like to discuss with you, to the point, keeping it short, keeping it sweet, keeping it stoic and practical. And it's a stoic response to coronavirus, Covid-19, which I'm pretty sure you're aware of, because it has been a very public pandemic. And now, a stoic response to the situation is that we should not allow ourselves in the situation of a pandemic for it to become a panic epidemic. We play in words there. And one of the first human responses to these situations is a sort of panic attack. Now, we've got to watch this, because when we respond with panic, it's emotive response, it is lacking common sense, it is lacking an realistic overview of a situation. It tends to be irrational, unreasonable, and we rush out and start buying lots and lots of toilet paper. Now, just to reassure you, I've done this myself in the past when I've been in situations where I didn't have access to toilet paper, that I've used scrunched up, cut up newspapers, which is a very, very useful purpose for a newspaper. When you've finished reading all the bullshit and lies in it, you can put it to a more practical use. Just watch that you don't get a rash on your bottom from all the toxicity, so to speak, in the ink that they use in newspapers. Another option is to use leaves, which, having been in kind of survival situations, I happen to say I must add that it's not for the purposes of survival, it's the purposes of education. But having to kind of make do with the minimum, it really is a total reality check, and it just shows how utterly dependent the majority of people are on the normal constructs of society, and how ill-prepared people are for when it breaks down. Now, I think it's highly unlikely it's going to happen in this coronavirus situation. Viruses have been around forever. They are a very simple, tough life form that can survive for long, long times in the form of spores. And it is, everybody will be aware of it, that, you know, there's certain times a year that we get cold or flu symptoms, and our body's immunity kicks in to deal with it. In other words, we have antibodies that are designed to fight infections, to identify foreign invaders in the form of bacteria and virus, and basically to fight them off. And the body is very successful at doing that. However, there's certain things that help the body to boost the immune system, and that is healthy eating, getting exercise and being active, getting fresh air, and importantly, not being stressed out your head. Modern life has people who are inactive, who are not getting enough exercise, not enough fresh air, are totally stressed out their head, and are not eating properly, and therefore on a daily basis are partly undermining the body's immunity system. One of the quickest ways we can boost it is to take extra vitamin D, particularly people in northern countries where there is less sunlight. And this is the reason that white people are white, purely physiological, and that is so that the skin is the colour to absorb more sunlight that's available and convert it into vitamin D. Vitamin D is so essential as a vitamin to our well-being and our health that the body actually manufactures it itself. However, there are times when you're in the dark, spending a lot of time indoors, away from the sunshine, or spending too much time covered up with sunblocker that the skin cannot absorb and manufacture vitamin D. Therefore, taking vitamin D supplements is a good idea. Not permanently, but particularly during winter times, or times when the body's stressed or there's viral infections going around. Same with vitamin C. Additional vitamin C has been proven by the medical people to taking additional vitamin C, particularly in the form of fresh fruit. Oranges and kiwi fruit. Kiwi fruit are full of vitamin C. Very good source. Or, if needs, take the supplements. But boosting vitamin C also helps the body to fight off viral infections. The most vulnerable people to these viral infections are elderly. I remember as a kid when the cold or the flu, influenza, which did lead to pneumonia, was actually called the old man's friend, for the simple reason that elderly people in the old days were so distressed, living beyond their natural years if they were fortunate, that the body had broken down and they were being affected constantly by every little infection that was doing the rounds, that for younger generation would barely even be noticed. And therefore it was the flus and colds that would carry the old folk away in the winter. And in the old days this was necessary because it saved on the food supply for the rest of the tribes. So we're not that far away from Mother Nature's influence in the way that people behave and the reason for things happening. So elderly folk are vulnerable, and unfortunately it's made worse by the fact that they're probably already on medication, which is putting pressure on the system, that they are having greater difficulty absorbing nutrients because the body's breaking down slowly and gradually, and therefore it is very prudent for elderly folk to be isolated. The problem arises, though, that if young folk are artificially isolated from the influence of viruses, then the young people's immune systems are not getting the practice to build immunity from the current generation of virus to prepare in immunity and be able to prepare to fight the next generation of virus in 1, 2, 5 or 10 years' time. And therefore a certain level of exposure to viruses is actually highly beneficial, and it's natural. It is perfectly natural. It is the weakest who tend to be the most vulnerable, but that's always been the case, whatever the situation. So a Stoic's response is to, first of all, before we can look after those around us, we have to boost our own immunity to look after ourselves as best we can, review our lifestyle, review our circumstances, and by the way, if it means self-isolating, which seems to be quite fashionable and recommended at the moment, take the opportunity to switch off the television because they're giving you propaganda. Get yourself a book, use the time, the valuable time that's been presented to you, and if it means a certain loss of income, well, just plan to spend less. Absolutely very, very useful to have the experience of having less, getting by on less, and appreciating the sudden value of additional time to think, time and space to think constructively about where life is going for each and every one of us. Whatever the media say, it is not the end of the world, and whatever happens, the whole situation will be weaponized by the elite because it's natural law. It doesn't matter where you go in the universe, the same thing happens. It's as simple as that. So I'm not calling out any judgment on it. It's real life. And being stoic is living real life in the real world with real awareness and not allowing ourselves to be swayed, manipulated and dumbed down by the manufactured illusions that we are peppered with, particularly by the media, but also by society around us. Having said that, very important is to use common sense. Be careful, be cautious, take precautions, and be available for the community around you. I'm certainly volunteer. I'm keeping an eye on my neighbours, any elderly neighbours. They can phone me if they need messages collected. I'll go out and do it. I'll leave it on the doorstep. Simple as that. Do you know what? one of the biggest ways that we can help ourselves and boost our positivity, and positivity is so important for immunity, for boosting our well-being. You know, if you ask any surgeon, who survives the operations? The positive people, the people with something to live for, the people that get up in the morning and live life. Who are the people who do not survive in operations and times of trauma and stress and significant illnesses? It's the negative people, the people who give in and quit too soon because it's the way, the position they've put themselves into. Simple as that. Whew. I hope you've found my fitter philosophy. It is a bit of a rant, actually. My advice on stoicism and the coronavirus useful. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave you with a little bit of a view now. It's got sunshine in it and it's got new growth. It's the end of winter in the world around us in the Northern Hemisphere. Spring is arriving, and with spring is the flourishing of life, and that's the way we should see the world. We should see it as a springtime. It's not how bad things are, it's how good things can be. It's keeping that positivity. Go for it, gainers, because when you keep that positivity, you are making gains. I'm Ralphie, thank you for watching, we'll see you soon.